right, hello and welcome everyone. This is Trino Contributor Call on the 27th of February, and we're ready to roll. Not much to discuss today. I just wanted to point out that the Trino 470 release, if I look at the release notes that we just recently, 70 and 71 releases that we released recently, there's some pretty major new things in there. We have the AI functions added. We've removed updated a bit more on the Python UDFs. So the Python UDFs now can access some default packages out of the Python ecosystem. The server RPM is removed as part of the packaging improvement issue that I'm working on with a bunch of others. The RPM is now gone, and we're working towards shipping a smaller tarball and a smaller Docker container. And then the process is to update and create your own. The RPM already has that process, so there is a repository called Trino Packages where you can use this project to build your own tarball. So going forward, we won't release a tarball every time, which is like, if someone wants to build a tarball, they can by just cloning this repository. There's instructions on how to update the POM to update the version that you want, and then you get your RPM as part of the build. But we talked to the community, and no one really uses the tarball much anymore, so we don't need to dump more of that each time with each release in. So that's that work. The packaging project is moving ahead quite okay, so I think that's coming soon. We'll do a Trino community broadcast about that in 2 episodes. The next episode is about, today's episode is with Jan about the Faker connector, which is going to be great. And then we had talk about Lakekeeper in another episode, and then I'll talk about the packaging and do a demo of all that stuff. But then hopefully Jan and me have gotten the minimal Docker container and all that stuff working as well. The other topic is just like in that release also, the local file system is now supported. So that's a way to use the object storage connectors. So Iceberg, Delta Lake, Hudi, and Hive, where you use a mount point on the local file system of all the workers. Obviously, it has to mount the same storage system, whatever, and then you can use it like a lake. That's typically used for on-prem storage solutions that kind of use that, and that's now available. So it was always there and has always been tested and working. We just haven't exposed it to users, so now that's there as well. And then also and that's in all the connectors. Those are the major changes that I wanted to talk about, and that's pretty much it. So what else does anyone else want to chat about? Jan, Dane, Doug, Christian?
I have one question. Does anyone know is there any work happening around secrets, like making secrets first-class citizens in the SQL language in Trino? I'm asking because this would be one requirement to add like a set of functions for reading single files instead of tables from object storage. And there's been some interest about that. Like UE has a PR open that proposes adding functions like this. But to do this correctly, we would need to figure out authentication, and having secrets would be the best way to do that.
Isn't that also something we wanted to have /do for the dynamic catalogs?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I remember talking about was how we want to manage secrets for dynamic catalogs. But I honestly don't remember that. It was like, I don't know, it was the end of last year maybe. And it was mostly focused around the create catalog command because it's pretty complicated with the create catalog's difficult because it's like, you know, you have problems with like misspellings and stuff like that. So it's like, what do you redact? What do you not redact? So I think we worked through a bunch of that to make sure that we're pretty conservative there. But at the time, we were suggesting that we should add create secrets and create secret, alter secret, drop secret, that sort of stuff. Similar to what Snowflake has commands like that. They're the one I know about. Theirs are a little weird because like they're very specific to their platform, but in general, I think having the ability to have commands so you can like interact with your secret manager where possible would be great. I mean, listing like the secret names would be great too. We did talk a little bit about having like functions to like SQL functions to interact with secrets. That gets more tricky because like how the optimizer works, you have to make sure they don't actually inline. So not sure how we would want to manage that specifically. That's a much more complicated problem. So, but I like, if you don't know who's working on it, then there's probably no one working on it.
Cool. Well, not cool, but
oh yeah, the other place we talked about secrets was adding the ability for things like the Python function to be able to have like secrets added into their environment. Again, very much like Snowflake did with their Python functions. So.
Yeah.
I have a question following up from that. Is there any updates on the dynamic catalog side of things? Not necessarily for secrets, but having some sort of like HTTP service store or SQL's backing for that.
I don't think anyone's working on it. I looked at it briefly. I don't think it's too much work at this point. The main thing around secrets, around dynamic catalogs, is making sure that like the secrets are protected when people are running the commands to create them.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I think the thought was that like currently it only supports the Hive metastore or like / the Hive connector and the memory connector. Right? The thought was that like all the JDBC connectors supported sort of right like that.
Sorry, what?
The thought was that all the JDBC connectors could support it theoretically, right?
Support the
dynamic catalog storage.
Oh yeah, I mean, you should be able to store dynamic catalogs in basically anything that's key value store or better. Because like you probably need a listing, maybe like you're gonna need a listing interface. You're gonna need like, you know, create and delete are about the only things you need to do it. Yeah. Like any star should work. It's not super complicated.
Yeah, so Christian, if you're looking for something there, I guess we could help with reviewing, but I'm not aware of any ongoing work for that.
Yeah. And if you do want to work on it, I would look at what was done for the there's a resource group plugin that stores stuff in a SQL database. Like if you just follow the pattern of that code, that would be pretty straightforward for the SQL one.
Yeah, that makes sense. I might look at it one day. Not super urgent now, but I've been following the dynamic catalogs for a while since it Seems like a nice use case. I mean, we end up redeploying quite often just to update catalogs or add catalogs.
Cool. Doug, George, anything? James?
I have one topic that I would like to discuss.
Go.
I forget about calling this out during the maintainers call, but JDK 24 is coming next month, and most of the things looks fine except for the Kafka connector, which is failing due to the usage of the get subject, like the security manager that is being removed. But they will release a new client pretty soon, so this will be fixed. But the Kudu and Phoenix will be broken, and there is no interest in actually fixing that on their side. So the question is whether we want to keep these connectors or just hold with the update.
So with the if we merge, so my intent was with the packaging project to get that done before then.
No,
And-
the problem is that they
But it
won't
doesn't
work at
solve
all.
the issue.
Yeah, I was just gonna ask. So if that solves the problem, that's good, and if not, then we already did the community survey and anything, so we can throw them out.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's if they aren't gonna update, then they can go. If someone actually cares enough, then they can go convince the community to update.
So I think I can prepare PRs for both of them getting kicked out, and then we just kick them out right when we upgrade and make 24 requirement, maybe a little bit before. Call it a day.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can always add them back if someone they're actually gonna. Like-
Yeah, exactly. Right, like we can restore them back from whatever tags, whatever it was in.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, cool. I can also so I guess in the docs we can also basically throw the docs out and leave something like not available because of 24 compatibility or something like we'll figure that out, I think.
Yeah.
Cool. So that's coming out by end of March or so, like middle of March, right?
Yeah. It's
Yeah.
like 20 or something like that.
Do we need another blog post around that again? I mean, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
Okay, I'll do one. All right, that sounds good. Good point. George, are you there? You muted?
Yes, I'm here. I was muted earlier. I figured it out. Thanks.
Okay, cool. I was just wondering. I looked a little bit at the C# client.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know enough about releasing that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I think it would be really great if we could get the GitHub action added to do the release. I sent you a couple of links for blog posts where people have done that.
Yep.
I think there's a couple of metadata stuff we need to improve. And then Dane, if you could, or David or Martin could sync on whatever is necessary for the certificate.
Yeah, I think that the certificate, what has to happen is we just have to paste the secret into the GitHub account, and then and we can generate a certificate there. I've got some instructions here. So yeah, it looks like we've got to just figure out that process. And I remember, I believe, Dane, you have to upload the certificate as you're the administrator.
Yeah, Martin.
Yeah.
So if you
Yeah.
could figure out the details and then we can do a quick call and get that added, then it would be great. I would really like the C# client to be released because there's people asking everywhere. And I noticed that there's some people in the community that have other C# clients on NuGet and org, and I think they're actually interested in contributing to the one we have. So ideally we could get those PRs looked at, merged, and once we ship a binary, there's good reason for people to move over.
Right.
I think we could basically sort of centralize the efforts around it, and that would be good.
That's right. The other one, I've looked at the other ones extensively before we built this one. And I think the other ones were wide, where this one was narrow, which was we focused on the query part, but the others do have all the other API support. So bringing some of that and collaborating there would be ideal.
Yeah. Okay. So yeah, That would be awesome. Let me know. I will look a little bit as well, but I'm limited knowledge in my
course.
NuGet packagery.
And my priority right now is we need to make it easier to deploy Trino in Azure. And the biggest issue there is going to be the metastore, especially for Delta tables, especially as we're not going to be using a service anymore. People are going to be doing it manually, and we have intense security restrictions on what we can do. So we have to be very careful. And what I'm thinking about doing for that is what we're going to do is bring all the teams together who want in Microsoft who want to use Trino and no longer have an Azure service to do so, and figure out that list of gaps and try and get some collaboration with the open source community so that what happens is all the changes our teams make are pushed to open source, so we pull it in. But the biggest lift, I think, is just the metastore. Like that is a somewhat overwhelming effort in terms of it's overwhelming to the teams, and that like it's not ready to go, and that we're going to have to work on it to make sure it's compliant with our internal policies. But I'm just saying that's coming. I'm going to start meeting with people next week about that.
You're talking about the Hive metastore?
Yes, because we use Delta tables, and it looks like the only option is glue and thrift.
So are you only interested in supporting Trino? Or are you using like Spark also?
People are using a mix of things. They will be using
Spark.
Yes.
Yeah. So the only options are either like, you could patch up the existing metastore, but like given what's happening in that community, so not sure you're gonna end up owning it.
Right.
And so you could look at creating like a new protocol. Like there isn't that much needed for these things. Like the Hive metastore looks really daunting, but at the end of the day, the vast majority of the APIs in there were added for like those ACID tables that honestly no one uses anymore.
Yep.
So like there aren't that many APIs. You could try making a new one based around the glue APIs. That it wouldn't be too complicated. Again, there just aren't that many of them. You need like CRUD for schemas, tables, functions. Delta doesn't use. If you're only using Delta, you don't even need partitions because I don't think it uses partitions. Maybe it does. I honestly don't remember.
So that's not a problem. It does use partitions, but they're not like they're all file.
Yeah, I'd look at. I believe in the AWS proxy package, there's some glue stuff there. So like maybe build something on that. But it's a common problem.
And with Iceberg, there is REST, JDBC, Nessie. Are any of those interesting?
Nessie is getting deprecated / merged into Apache Polaris. Okay. Apache Polaris is an implementation of the REST stuff, but the problem with all of them is it only supports Iceberg. So like on its own, it's all nice and good, but it doesn't really do anything. So I think all like Polaris and like the Databricks Unity, they're both expanding to support the other stuff. Ultimately, you need something that supports the Hive protocol, the Glue protocol, and that other stuff. So
you don't really need the Hive protocol.
Well, not the full thing.
Like, if you supported Glue, that would be good enough. Based on those choices, I would definitely choose the Glue one. Alternatively, like if you have a lot of time, I'd go and make a new API to support the legacy stuff. Again, it's not that complicated.
Right.
Like it's CRUD for like a handful of entities. The Glue guys actually simplified a whole bunch of the stuff, and they pushed problems like, in the Hive metastore, when you delete a table, like the server is responsible for deleting the files for managed tables and things like that. Whereas on the Glue side, they're like, no, we don't do any of that. And so like anyone that's integrated with Glue, which is literally everything, like everything integrated with Glue. So like you can just, if you follow them, then you know you don't have to do the complicated bits.
Are you suggesting I do a glue variant? Sorry, I clone.
I would
glue
literally,
if I
I would
load
literally implement the glue APIs. Yeah,
glue APIs. Okay.
yeah,
Because one option we
yeah.
had is we could do glue around one lake. Now one lake is not in any way exciting, not an exciting prospect, but it is the standard. So and it probably won't last 2 or 3 years. But I think that's an option. Okay, thank you for that, especially the emphasis that really I can just be reductive and think of it as CRUD. I will propose.
Yeah.
I'll propose that.
Yeah, I've never even heard of one lake.
You don't want to. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is a naive approach to cataloging data.
But as Dane mentioned, the AWS proxy project that we have in the Trino org, that Christian is here, has a little bit of that jazz. And if there is a desire to have a cross-engine, whatever, metastore, that I'm sure there is a market for it. It feels like Lakekeeper and all the others are trying to get that going, but
yeah. So the AWS
home,
proxy project's got an implementation. It's got a glue proxy in it. So basically, you would take that code, make it not be a proxy, and just talk to a database.
Okay, so there's a bunch of things to look at here. Okay,
Yeah.
I'll look through these with some people next week, and we'll.
And if you want to like contribute on the AWS proxy and add that as a component in there, we can talk as well. That
Yeah, there's quite a lot of interest in this space. Like the REST people from Iceberg, like they went off and they kind of just carved out this path, and like they aren't dealing with any of the legacy stuff. So like the problem is that kind of killed the rest of the people that were actually working on any reasonable metastore.
Yep.
So like now it's like people are looking around going like, what do I do?
Yeah.
So yeah, if you want to actually build one based on that code, like we definitely have space in the Trino project for something like that. So
yeah, we're going to make an assessment, and we're going to really have to be efficient because our objective is to make it deployable quickly. So we need to figure out what the easiest path is. But I will definitely give you feedback on what I think our path will be, and you can tell me I'm off the rails.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Awesome. Cool. Also, heads up, I will organize a meeting around the query UI and preview UI and Trino Gateway UI, like around all these UI components.
Yeah, please, because I did a great work on that when I had time to work on Trino. And I don't want it to throw away because there's a bunch of good stuff in there. You might hate it, but I want to share it.
No, we would love to have it, as we said before. So just have to figure out the mechanics on it. So that's cool.
Thanks.
All right, Doug, you're an honored guest. What's up? Or you're just listening in?
I'm mostly. I mean, I don't have too many things this week. I hate to show up and just complain about stuff and then the community just fixes it. But yeah, no, I mean, nah, you know, I've been just playing more around the event listener and feeding the query complete stuff to Kafka and then reading it back in and throwing it on an iceberg table and then doing like usage statistics off of that. And you know, there's a couple things that I'd like to that I'm going to look into adding to it, like the errors, like if a query fails on an error.
Awesome.
You know, so I mean, you know, I'd be interested if anybody has like documentation or anything around like how they handle, like, you know, generating usage reports, like identify, you know, we run like 20,000 queries an hour, or you know, and when we see errors, like, you know, through the UI, like if I'm happen to watch the UI, I can pick them up, but yeah, I don't have anything really set up to like analyze errors and see if they're user errors versus other errors. But
yeah, no, that's fair. I'm not.
Yeah, that's it. But yeah. So, but I'm happy things are working well. It's a.
I want to
Go on, Christian.
Just wanted to jump in for a second because this is something that I worked on some time ago, loading query metrics into Postgres since this was like 2021, 2022, and Iceberg was simply around. We've got two open source projects from Bloomberg, which are Python projects built around taking that query metrics JSON, the blob that Trino will spit out on query complete events, and breaking it down into Postgres tables if you're interested. I'll send a link here so you can take a look at it.
Yeah, great.
It's a bit out of date, so do be warned. We haven't been taking super good care of it, unfortunately.
Understood. Great. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'll add those to the show notes as well then. When it comes to playing around, by the way, I just wanted to mention I played around with the AI functions that are recently in Trino. It's very easy to play around with it locally if you use Olama. Just make sure you download the model before you fire it up, because the model has to be there. And some of those models are super big and it's not going to work otherwise. But before you start up Trino, basically. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the DuckDB connector works nicely, but I'm not sure if it works in a cluster deployment. Like, it works in a sense that you can have two nodes up and running and they access the same DuckDB database, but I'm not sure how that scales or like whatever. It would have to be accessible from all the different nodes. And don't try to use the memory DuckDB instance stuff. That doesn't work. I tried that. And I have a PR up to update the documentation just in case anyone is playing with it. Don't get misled. And try that. And related to that, there's also security issues. Like DuckDB theoretically allows like read from table and so like read from JSON file. I'm not sure how that works out, but it's all encapsulated in the query pass-through, so it's the same security issues as with any other thing, just that it goes to the local file system. So it's like, yeah, I don't know, but we'll document that more soon. I noticed that.
Sorry, I wanted to mention on the AI functions, if you're interested in them, I strongly suggest going and looking at the PR that added them. They are shockingly simple. They're mostly like pre-canned prompts. And so if you want to like add some more, it's very, very, very easy to add more functions. Like, it's really worth taking a look at it. They're super simple, kind of fun to play with.
Yeah, it's kind of funny how it's like literally like an English text.
Yeah, the functions are literally like, hey, I'd like you to classify it. Here's some classifications. Please do that. Just like, that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, English is the new programming language now.
Yeah.
Right. Anyone else? Shoham, you jumped in. Did you want to have any questions or do you want to discuss anything? All right. Well, if there's nothing else, then
Can I ask one quick question?
always,
I'll
George.
email you anyway. AWS proxy, I don't really get it. I'm reading the README and I'm not sure what it actually does.
Yeah, we want to do a bit more of an introduction for it. Christian is a sub-project maintainer. So Christian, can you give us a high level?
Yeah.
Couple of sentences. Yeah.
So I'll go more into your use case for Glue. You can think as AWS proxy in a way a Spring, but for stuff that uses SIG-v4 for authentication. It gives it the infrastructure to get requests that are signed with SIG-v4, which is what Glue and S3 and all kind of Amazon services use.
Mm-hmm.
And then basically return a parse the request, verify the signature, and then return a response to that. It doesn't, for Glue specifically, it doesn't provide you any actual logic onto what you do. It just parses and reads the request types. For S3, it does some more interesting stuff. We've got Jordan, who's another sub-project maintainer with us. He's the one that's looking into the Glue stuff specifically. I only reviewed the PRs, so I don't have the best context on that area.
Right. So it's basically a security proxy to S3 because S3 has, in the cases where S3 uses this authentication type, I didn't quite catch the name of it. What was that name of that again?
Signature v4.
Signature v4. Okay. Okay.
Yep.
Thank you.
And like, correct me if I'm wrong, Christian, but the idea behind aws-proxy is also to some degree to sit between S3 and the metastore storage and one or multiple query engines on your network. So including Trino, but also Spark, right? Like as an abstraction layer in between.
Yes, exactly. So we started it as a proxy that would modify your request a bit, maybe, but not always, and then proxy to some AWS S3 instance. But for stuff like Glue or STS, it's not necessarily a proxy, it's just a server that responds to those types of requests. Which I don't think there's an alternative to it, since both STS and Glue are kind of quote unquote proprietary protocols from AWS.
Right. Yeah. I can see how this would be used, but I think we actually already have a change which we could probably contribute to the community, just because that problem is federated credential. And we actually have that piece in Trino, so we can probably, I don't know if it's open source. I don't think we open sourced it. I don't think it was from open source. So I'm gonna check if it's there in Trino. So the Trino side I'm less worried about is the catalog side. The fact that HMS tries to go to the catalog, goes to the storage and can't do it because it's FIC, and putting FIC in HMS was a lot of work, and I don't want to try to contribute that, so I'm trying to circumvent it from the catalog side. So it might be that the approach is catalog first and then some Trino open source Trino contribution, but I will look at AWS proxy as well. I've added it to our list and I send that off to some people. Thank you.
Yeah. No, it's look at AWS proxy, kind of a way for you to implement your own Glue catalog. If you're interested in that.
Yeah, that would be great. I might have a follow-up conversation with you. That seems like the best approach.
Yeah, I'm on the Trino Slack if you need to ping me.
Perfect. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else? Eric just jumped in as well. Any other topics from you or anyone else?
And I've never been able to do. No, I was talking to Jan earlier this week, or last week. We're going to start working on the Trino connector, Trino storage connector too as well. Add some additional support.
Yeah, that's the one from Jan. Jan is here as well. Like, might be worth contributing that to Trino itself and like see what
yeah, this is what I mentioned at the beginning of the call about I was asking about secrets. So Eric, there is a PR from Yuya open adding a set of functions like in the Trino storage connector to Trino, but I think besides reviewing the SQL syntax, merging this would require, it would be good to have support for secrets in Trino to handle authentication to the storage. So like this is a long answer for how we can make this be part of Trino.
The first pass, we're just going to use pre-signed URLs, so the authentication can be in it. But then you're correct as how do you authenticate to different storage systems and buckets using that? Yeah, we know, right? Because otherwise, it shows up in the query plan, it gets logged, it kind of gets messy.
Yeah. So using the third-party connector right now is a good option until we can figure this out in Trino.
Yep, we will. We're going to give you the PR to that third party, and then we can figure that out long term how it goes.
And Andy already reached out to me today, so he's working on that.
Yep. I did a brain dump with him yesterday. He got back off vacation, so he's working on it now. I'm surprised he's not on the call. Yeah.
Cool. All right, everyone. Any other topics?
I had a question for you guys. How many people are running the fault-tolerant execution, also called Project Tardigrade? Does it degrade performance that much on read queries?
We used to run it, and it was variant. It depended on its situation. It was actually shockingly good. That's what we found because we did a lot of benchmarking. But I let the others say.
So, let me ask you, would you run a Trino Gateway in front of read clusters and fault-tolerant execution clusters, or would you just re-enable all of your clusters to be fault-tolerant and not go through, oh, is this an update, send it to this cluster, if this is a read, send it to this other cluster? Do you have different clusters run different modes like that, or you just kind of configure it all to be the same?
I would still do the analytics cluster to be the normal mode.
Without fault-tolerant enabled?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah.
Especially with bigger data volumes and stuff, the exchange storage and stuff adds quite a bit of an overhead for the retries, and there's a lot of transfer to the external storage, and then you have to manage that. If you want to do that for all the queries, that gets, yeah, I would not do it. Like, I think we've seen like performance things like 10% and stuff, and that then ends up costing you money as well, right?
Yep. Okay. I get it.
That's all I'm aware of.
Yep.
Cool. All right. I think, unless there's anything else.
Sorry, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was saying quite a few people run it. The thinking of it as like, oh, this is what I use for my write queries. I don't think that's the right approach to it. Like, fault tolerance is kind of a misnomer. Like, yes, if a machine crashes, it's likely your entire query won't crash. But that's normally not a big problem. Like, machines don't generally crash unless your query cluster is misconfigured. The main thing it can do is it can run very large queries on very small hardware. So because it can do staged execution where it's only executing one small part of the overall query at a time. Now, the cost of that is everything gets shuffled through storage, and that can be quite expensive. Like, normally what people are doing is they're using a normal cluster for their interactive workloads, and then they're using a fault-tolerant cluster for really large jobs. Now, what's a really large job? Kind of depends on your environment. Some people are like, well, we use it for like all of our, write jobs, because all our write jobs are big. Kind of depends. And there's definitely a cost. There are cases where it'll show up, and there's a lot of cases where it doesn't. So, but there's a reason why it's not like, well, this is just the mode. We always run in this mode. Like, if it was even close all the time, we would definitely just turn it on. And
yep, I get it.
Because running two clusters sucks. Like, you're siloing your hardware. It's a real pain.
Yeah, but lots of users are way beyond two clusters. They're like, right? So.
Yeah.
Sure. But I mean, even if you have two clusters, like, how do I route the work? How do I choose which goes where? Like, these are not easy things. So, like, that's the main, like, I would love to have, like, you just run it, it just works. But that's not where it is. Also, you're paying for all that extra IO. Like, well, I don't know. You guys aren't in Amazon, but someone's paying for all that extra IO workload.
Yeah, but we still have multiple data centers, and I guess data replication. Yeah, there's still costs regardless, even if you have all the stuff internal.
Yeah.
You're good.
I got a follow-up question on that. I know there were some plans to do query analysis in the Trino Gateway. Do you think it's feasible to have some guesstimate of how big a query will be at the gateway and be able to route it there?
No, because it doesn't have all the metadata and like doesn't have all the knowledge of everything.
That's true.
The best thing
You would need to explain the query. So you could send a query to one of the coordinators and run like explain IO. She'll tell you like how much data it thinks it needs to scan.
Yeah, that's
And by
what,
that,
in the Trino Gateway discussions. What we thought of doing is like having a optional way to set up a cluster that is like just a coordinator that has all the catalogs theoretically, or like all the ones you're interested in, and you just use that for explain queries only. And Trino Gateway always talks to that, get the explain plan, and then decides on the routing to whatever cluster is better. But we only like you sort of daydreamed that as an approach, but we haven't talked about that.
I see.
I mean, I'd probably run explain on whatever the default cluster is, the one where like you're most likely to run things, because then when you go back to run it again, because it'll run a second time, all the metadata will be cached. But yeah, that's like back at Facebook, that's what we did. Like we would run explain on things.
Yeah.
Interesting. Doesn't that really hit your analytic queries?
I mean, explain doesn't take that long. Unless you don't have cached metadata, but then everything's going to be slow. Like if your metadata access is slow, like it's going to be slow. But if it's fast, like explain takes milliseconds.
Yeah, you can do limited analysis of the query now because we have the parser library like from Trino in the gateway. So you can parse it, but that's kind of useless because, well, it's not useless completely, but it's limited because it misses all the metadata and everything. It just knows like strings basically, right? So that's like,
Yeah. I guess the goal of that was mostly to understand what catalogs you're keeping
yeah.
and stuff like that. Yeah.
All right.
But you definitely you can run explain IO. It's like sort of why it was added in the first place. But like we could add another explain command or just expand one of the existing ones, and it should be fast enough for your interactive queries.
Cool.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think that's it for today. Again, Trino Contributor Call, 27th of February. And we'll see you in another month time for the next contributor call, or in like roughly half an hour or something for Trino Community broadcast about the Faker connector with Jan.
Yeah. Cool. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.